And to start the session, next slide, please. We will start the session with Dr. Dinesh Murugesan, who will be helping us with his insights from the HR perspective. Dr. Dinesh, he has an overall experience of over more than 2 decades as a diverse experience across all specialized areas, and he has worked in companies like TCS, Deloitte, Bank of America before his stint at DSM, where he is currently working as a head HR. So he is a head HR pan India, and he is a member of the India leadership team and the member of the board of directors as well. He has been a speaker in several organizations and associations, events alike, and he has received the Best HR Leadership Award by SHRI and Top HR Leaders Award granted by the World HRD Congress. He was also conferred with the prestigious HR Chanakya Award by ITIL. He recently received the 101 Top HR Minds Award from CHRO Asia. Thank you so much, Dr. Dinesh, for joining us for this event, and over to you.
Thanks. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. I hope my audio and video are clear.
Loud and clear, Dr. Dinesh.
Great, thank you. So before I jump into the topic, I want to take a minute to thank PMI for this great opportunity to interact with various professionals from across the state. I hope, and I also want to appreciate you for setting up a platform like this, which provides a great opportunity for people like us to learn and share and interact with a lot of people. So really, kudos to PMICC Hyderabad chapter for doing this. And I heard there are 70 plus participants, right? On a Sunday morning at 10:30, this many people joining shows the kind of commitment that they have to learning. And for speakers like me, it not only serves as a morale booster, but it also sets a lot of accountability on us that we do some justice to these people who are on the call. And on that note, I'm trying my level best to see how much more I know that this group of people already know a lot of things, and I'm going to see how much value addition I can bring into this group in terms of sharing with them what I know. And at the same time, I'm also looking for an interactive session, maybe during the Q&A or something, where I can also learn something from these people. On that note, you can see the agenda. The agenda is kind of kept pretty simple to tell you all about how does the future of work for project managers look like. And here is where I would probably, for the lack of a better term, I would say I will place a disclaimer, because I think all of us on this call will agree that we all are in the middle of the most uncertain times that any generation would have ever faced. We are in a quagmire of uncertainty. There is an economic slowdown is happening. There is a pandemic that is hitting us. While there is a little light at the end of the tunnel on the economic front, the pandemic still seems to be a mystery. The source and destination are yet not clear for any of us. But having said that, the COVID does not continue to be an excuse for not doing anything, be it the corporate world or be in the personal life or anywhere. I think we need to cross this, and everybody is thinking in that direction. So in that context, I will try to, bring some parlance into what it means for project managers. And then the side that I represent, I represent the HR community, and therefore we are in the business of hiring, retaining, developing people. So when it comes to hiring people, one thing that we need to keep in mind is, and I will dwell more on this as we move on. Everything around us is changing, be it the way of doing business. We're talking about the changing the way of working, and definitely if we all are changing the way of working from our side, the HR function is also going to change the way it is functioning today, and therefore recruiters who form an integral part of the HR function, they are also changing their approach in terms of getting people in. So we will take a look at that. And finally, what is important to all of you, and I'm sure most of you are in this session, looking for those one or two elements that you can take back, which is concrete, which will also help you what you should do as an individual, as a project manager in your field to move ahead. So that's how this whole session is structured. And of course, at the end, I think we have some time for Q&A and all that, where we can also discuss certain elements if you think it is not covered in the flow of my speech. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is a very generic view, and I thought it's important for all of us to take a look at this before we get into the specific view of what it means for project managers. And the reason I wanted to do this is, all of you would have heard this term. You should have end-to-end knowledge. You should get the larger picture. You should be able to view the big picture. These are generic terms that everybody says, and these days, these things are only becoming more and more, and the expectation of everyone knows everything is also kind of increasing. But very few people, I don't want to be ridiculed for saying this, but very few people actually tell you what it means and how do you go and get the big picture. How do you envisage, a larger context behind the projects? And that's the reason I'm going to spend a little time on this. And if you look at the five elements, let's forget the question mark for the time being. If you look at the five elements, there is technology, customer, and people. People, by people, we mean employees, business model, work, and workplace. Anything and everything that we do kind of revolves around this, five. And if you also think from your own, wearing your own project manager hats, you will see that, your elements will touch one of these or all of these. Now, for any business and, how the future of work looks like, definitely technology is kind of becoming the bottom line in everything we do. And the COVID pandemic only helped us, to kind of put an end to the digital debate. There was a lot of debate going on. Will digital really take over? Will digital be the way of working? And people are debating, maybe not. But now if you see after the COVID pandemic, take an example. Take example of this session itself. If not for COVID pandemic, this would have probably, happened in some hall or some venue where, we all would be sitting face to face and doing this and not leveraging the technology platform. But now I see there are number of such sessions that are coming using technology as a platform and going digital. So that is just an example. So technology takes over. The customers' views are also changing. We are moving into a more shared vision and, building trust, because earlier the building trust was sitting face to face. Now we have to do it remotely. Employees, and that is where we will also come into place, where because irrespective of whatever roles we do, we all are employees of an organization. How our ideas are changing, the different passion that each one brings in. Continuous learning will definitely become an integral part. I will talk more as we move on. And liquid workforce, and I think for people in project management, the terms like liquid workforce or what you see on the right hand side, and the business model which is called gig economy would not be new, but again something that we will delve on as we move ahead. So business models are changing, and most important, when we talk about future of work, how the work would change and how the workplace would change. And some of you would have heard these terms. There are terms like, future of work is again becoming an interesting terminology, but way of working. And then there are two, different terms that are coming up. One is the next normal, and the other is the new normal. Now, what do we mean by next normal and new normal? Is next normal is, okay, now COVID is continuing with us. How do we kind of deal with that, and how do we continue dealing with the pandemic if the solution is not yet found out, but life has to go on? That is next normal. And whatever vaccination is found, and we have found a way to curb the virus, and then it kind of settles down, then we have to move on ahead. Then that would be the next normal. That's the way the future of work looks like. And definitely, like I said, while the virus has brought in a lot of elements that put a standstill to a few things, but it has taught us some very valid lessons that is really helping us to move ahead, and also preparing in the journey of how do we prepare ourselves for such unexpected risks that would come in, unexpected pandemics that would come in, any other hurdle that would interrupt the flow of work, whatever the work could be, and how do we move on. Yeah. So just again to give you a broader view of these five elements. And again, if you look at project management, or if you look at projects as such, anything will revolve around business. So if business is revolving around these five parameters, I see project management excuse me, also revolving around these five parameters, and therefore how it would change. Now, yeah, can we move on to the next slide? Probably that is where we would need a lot of time. And if you see, there are about 10 elements here, of what project management would touch on, or how project management would evolve. And what I will do is, when we speak on this chart, I will take you through what are some of the things that are changing in this, and how does it have an impact on project management. And after some time, in the end, I will use the same slide also to talk about what is that you should do, as project managers, or anyone who is involved in any role in project management. What are the things that you should do? Either it helps you to kind of enable yourselves and upskill yourselves and empower yourselves more to do your current job, or if you're looking for a new job, what are some of those things that you should be looking at. So to start with, I will start with the constantly changing digital technologies first. That's where I also initially said, and we all can witness that, the world is only becoming more and more technical and digital. Now, this is not something that is, new to project managers, or this is not, a rocket science for you people, because I mostly see technology and project management working together a lot. One without the other really does not make sense. At least in the IT and ITES industries, there is a lot of collaboration between technology and project management. And even if I move on to other businesses or other industries, technology and project management do work hand in hand in a lot of places. And therefore, if we look at now 2020 and beyond, that I don't see a reason why project managers should not be tech savvy. Or I would rather say, I might be sounding a little judgmental in my call, I would rather say project managers should be technology savvy. And it is no other group than PMI themselves. They coined this term called technology quotient. We have heard about IQ, EQ, now we are talking about TQ. And how does PMI define it? They say that it's a person's ability to adapt, manage, and integrate technology based on the needs of the organization or a project in hand. It's very simple. So all they say is project managers should have the ability to adapt themselves to the new technologies that are evolving. Now that's the first thing. Now, how does it impact the project manager's role? Digital project managers, and now I'm putting another term called digital project managers. And again, there is one element of remote working where I will touch more on this, where now project management is also happening virtual, it's happening remote. And if you are becoming a technically enabled project manager, then by virtue of that, you are becoming a digital project manager. That is probably a new role that is evolving, which is a digital project managers. Now, you should kind of keep yourselves abreast of various technologies that are happening around you. And I don't have to tell you that automation and AI technologies, they are becoming more and more prominent, increasingly, and they are very consistent also with the project management trends. Now, the good news is project management as a function also, it's enabling itself with new tools, new technology, keeping in pace with the digital technology. Now, and that is where project managers should understand the impact, that as long as we don't constantly keep upgrading ourselves, probably we might be left behind. I need to make another disclaimer here. I'm going to consciously not dwell too much into the skills or the tools and all that, because I'm also cautious that I don't overstep into Srikant's speech, because he's also going to talk about a lot of functional and technical stuff and all that. So I'm a little cautious, but in case, like I said, if there is something that is not touched by both of us, we can always touch that on the time that we have for the Q&A. Right. Now, after digital change management. Now, most people again in project management, change management would not be a term that is something that you hear new. But normally what happens is, at least in the projects that I have seen, change management is done by someone who's dealing with change management. And I mean, I also, in my experience of interviewing project managers, their view is kind of bound to that the projects that they handle, the start of the project, the end of the project, their scope, their deliverables, etc. Now, as we are moving into a more and more dynamic world, which is only constantly changing around us, now change is the key word here, right? And therefore, if things are changing, now it is becoming a hot topic, and also in project management trends. Whether you have to mitigate change, or you have to reduce change, embrace change, accelerate change, whatever. But project managers are also expected to be change management experts, right? And again, I'm not quoting this. There is also a data from the PMI group itself. That there are 63% of the companies that are carrying projects. It involves complex change, and they have an expectation that the project manager should also deal with the change. And like I mentioned there, change management is becoming a key element for any project success. Now, as a project management, you can strengthen the organization's ability. It could be the organization that you work for, or it could be the client organization that you work for. To conduct change management by setting the standards, by setting the process of your own team members also, and also develop a way to welcome the change than resisting the change. And this will lead to quite a balancing act, at least in the beginning, so that your project takes off properly. And then once it takes off properly, then it runs pretty smoothly. So change management is the second thing. The third one is risk management. And normally some of you might agree with me, might not agree with me, but I've seen in most of the project at least, project management and risk management always kind of conflicts with each other. The reason is the project management will want the project to proceed further, but risk management will always bring in elements to stop the project, to be careful, and both of them are doing their jobs. It's the nature of the function. The project management function has to keep the project going, and the risk management has to keep bringing in those hurdles, risk, whatever could stop the flow, and they will keep bringing in those elements to which appears like stopping the project, but their idea is not to stop the project, and therefore a conflict arises. Now that is becoming an increasingly, and especially, the pandemic. And most of you, again, on the call would know more than me of how many projects did suffer in the pandemic. And of course, it's not a blame, but like I said, it's a lesson that we learn. None of us knew that this pandemic would come. Even risk management did not put a point saying, okay, if a pandemic happens, how do we proceed? It never happened. But it did bring a lot of projects to standstill, causing severe losses to some companies, at least that I know. So risk management, the stake that risk management has on any business or any project is increasing. Now, how do you project managers encounter this kind of a problem where risk management continuously brings in those elements? Is another skill that you need to develop, that we start envisaging the risk and putting that into our project plans so that they don't suffer. So risk management is another element. Now, collaboration. Again, I'm just putting this point here. Project management is never an individual work. Even if it's a one-man project, there needs to be a lot of co-working, and there needs to be a lot of connection with other people, grouping it overall as collaboration, right? And again, this collaboration is something that would be done in different modes as we move ahead. If the future of work is going to be digital, if the future of work is going to be on remote, if the future of work is going to be using more and more technology, then we cannot stick to the same old traditional methods of excuse me, collaboration. We also need to come up with various innovative methods of collaboration. Now, what is happening here is no longer, it can be an individual work. Restricted to the scope of a project. You really have to put your neck out, go out and talk to people. Communication is becoming a very important element in collaboration. Soft skills like negotiation skills. There is an increasing requirement for emotional intelligence, and I will talk about that as we move to emotional intelligence as a topic. These things are gaining more and excuse me, gaining more and more importance in the daily life of a project manager. So I would sum it up as there is an increasing need for also soft skills, and therefore it contributes to the way you collaborate. That also you keep in mind, and we will definitely talk more about that as we move on. Okay. Now, sorry, the sixth one is greater focus on data. Right now, with analytics taking a bigger arena in everything that we do again. And I will talk about a function that I belong to, human resources. Now, human resources, again, most of my colleagues in the function will not agree, and thankfully, not many HR people are in the call. I hope so. I can make this, statement boldly. Human resources as a function did not use analytics at all in the past, and even if we have used it, we did not use it to the fullest. On the other hand, for example, if I look at finance as a function, they have been using analytics to the core in whatever they were doing, in their function to enable their function for decision making and all of that. Now, why I used human resources as a function is because even a function like human resources, which had not used analytics in the past, it's now really, gearing up. And then analytics is coming on the table. It's coming into the center of everything that we do. So now what is that I'm trying to say is anybody, irrespective of any role or whatever function that they do, you can't be a no numbers person anymore. We have to keep those numbers in mind, and data is only increasingly being used, and especially with profitability becoming more and more trickier. We have to be more smarter about the way we create project data, how we use data to estimate, how do we plan, forecast our projects. All these are terms that you know, so I'm not going to get deeper into it. It could be the also the algorithms that we use with some of the data, and today data is also increasingly getting available. So that is what I'm stressing, that now since data and analytics is becoming under focus and it's in the center, we need to focus on that. And a project manager can easily put a human spin on the data analysis. And if you add that human element into your data analysis, trust me, the project would be worth the weight of gold of whatever your weight is. Just to sum it up that way, that's how worthy your project would become if you put this. Now I spoke about this, adding a human spin and adding the human element. That is where it would be the right time for me to touch upon the next most important thing, which is emotional intelligence. Now, there can be a debate in our minds, and I can also envisage questions coming into some of your minds probably. Why is emotional intelligence important for a project manager? I have to make the project plan, define the scope, and like I said, put all the forecast, cost estimate, and all that, present it. And once the job is done, I need to get people and drive. But one thing that we need to understand is, as we are getting into this kind of a phase, any design, you look at a product design, or it could be a software design. Software again gets into whether it is for application or whether it is a product. Ultimately, it's becoming a product or an application by itself. If you see, human centric designs are coming up at large. So everything is driven by the customer. Everything is driven by stakeholders, right? The formal concept of human centered design has been around for decades, but however it has taken a central role now. And especially people who are into agile methodology and lean principles, you'll probably agree with me that there is more human element coming into this. And if you have to add those human element, it is very important that as project managers you need to develop that human element, and emotional intelligence therefore becomes a very key element here. And again, when I draw it to the digital project managers that I said, expanding your skills to include the customer experience, the customer service, the customer satisfaction, and taking it up to customer delight. We need to have that included into our service design, and therefore the emotional intelligence part is required. And if you have to make it more sharper and sharper, we need to get customer insights. Then we need to start thinking from the customer's shoes. And I'm not saying we don't do that. We do that today in a very systematic way, but we need to kind of broaden that and start thinking more from a human angle. And that is the next requirement that is really coming up in the project management space. Now, when I spoke about that, I also touched on some of the tool names, and I'll be very cautious not to step into too much of the tool names, because I'm not a project manager, I'm not a techie myself, but I know some of these terms. There are so many methodologies these days, like agile methodology. There is Kanban, and people are talking about design thinking, and I'm sure people on the call more than me. But what I'm saying is, it is only becoming more and more widespread, and we will be working more remotely. And as you start acclimatizing yourselves to more flexible ways of working, you should also be clear to follow processes that are less rigid and which are more, orientated, which gives you kind of the expansion or the scalability, as you call in your own terms. So that is what I would like to touch on, the hybrid project management methodologies, that the requirement for keeping things flexible is increasing more and more. And these things works very well when used in projects that are more likely to involve many changes, and provides efficient way, which does not limit your work. And it also does not, because normally for project managers, I know every hindrance that comes to a project, and where it looks like you need to extend the timeline, it actually frustrates you. You're like, why the hell this is happening? Probably part of the reason of the frustration is also the structure is well set, and anything that disturbs the structure a little bit really causes a lot of frustration. But if you keep the structure flexible, and you are willing to work with hybrid methodologies, and then you have a plan A, B, C, so when goes wrong you immediately pull in the other, I think that also eases a lot of your frustration, and gives you a feeling that you're not facing a standstill, nothing is kind of dragging you down, but you are continuously progressing, right? Now on that, I would again like to link to the other element of remote working. Now, the way we see it, during the pandemic, like I said, the next normal, the next normal is what we do now and immediately for the next 6 months to the next 18 months. If I put it that way, remote way of working seems to be the thing that will go on for a while. Be it we find a solution for the COVID pandemic or not, it's going to, and all companies are setting up their way of working, their infrastructure, their policies, procedures, and practices in this line. Right, and therefore it's going to proceed in this direction, and it's important. And the good news is everybody is talking about reviving their projects, starting new projects, and moving ahead in that direction. So if you look at that, it's very important that all of us cope to this remote way of working. And project managers, definitely, I know in the past were extensively traveling. Now travel is not going to happen for a while. So to be successful, it is very important that we get a hang of all these virtual, ways of thinking. Virtual ways of working, be it Microsoft Teams, or it could be Zoom, or it could be Google. There are so many tools. Again, good news is we have so many tools. Yeah, and yeah, I'm not going to dwell more on that. I think we all know what remote working means. Continuous learning. I was really wondering before I put this point here, and I need to be honest. Should I put that here or should I not put that here? Is it not implicit? And I'm going to talk to a set of project managers who are experienced, who know what it means. But then I thought it only makes sense for me to put that here just to re-emphasize that. Because we see there are more technology tools coming in, there are more project management tools coming in, there are more and more ways of working coming in. So project managers need to be agile in continuously learning what's happening around us. And not only that, one thing that is also very important is project managers should also continuously look at what is happening in the industry, not just in the IT industry, but also in other industries, what is happening at a high level, so that you get an exposure of this is what happening in the market, this is what is happening in various industries, and where therefore if I need to prepare myself as a successful project manager, these are the things that I need to focus on. Right now, I'm looking at the time. It's 11:04, and I also realized that I spoke at length. So I'm just trying to turn the table and pass it on to the organizers to see if I can take some questions now or I can move ahead.
No worries, Dinesh. We could go ahead and probably at the end of your session, if anything immediately needs attention, we could take the question.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah, I was saying, and this is, like I said, probably an important slide for us to understand. There is a lot running in the recruiter's mind as well, or the people who are hiring as well. Now, when the whole world is moving on to digital, and then me representing the HR function is giving a kind of a lecture and a yarn to everybody, saying that, oh, we need to move virtual, you need to move virtual, you need to be digital, you have to do this. I will become a fool if we do not also equate the HR function in that way. So it should become digital, and we should also get more accustomed to this remote way of working, and that's what is happening. So recruiters will be moving more and more to digital hiring. Interviews will be more on platforms like this. Face-to-face interviews are reducing at large. And because we are not able to meet people face-to-face and not able to talk to them, and in the face-to-face interview, there are a lot of benefits. To be honest, I'm missing that, because the face-to-face interview also gives us a fantastic opportunity to look at the body language of the person, what we call as the non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication also tells us a lot of things about this person. Those things are missing now, and therefore what will happen is we will move into more and more behavioral assessments, which will tell us about the behavior of this person. Now, to attract people, hire people, the number of calls are becoming less and less, because recruiters are also working from home, so they need to use their time also efficiently. More and more, they are moving into social media campaigns and looking into sites like LinkedIn and other social networking sites to hire people. What we are extremely looking for is also for flexible roles. And what it means to project management is, can somebody manage projects, multiple projects? Can somebody manage projects across domains? This is also coming as a new requirement. And of course, even though there are companies that have put hiring on hold, but we are all building pipeline. At least most of the efficient companies that I know, including the one that I work for, we are building a pipeline. And why is because, first I will talk in my own experience. For me, this is the third biggest hit that I'm seeing. The first one was the dot-com bust that happened in the end 90s, early 2000, late 90s, early 2000 time. The dot-com bust. The second one was the 2008, the great economic meltdown, and this is the third one. My previous experiences during both the slowdowns and both the recessions, when things bounce back, it becomes very, very difficult to hire people because when the ramp up happens again, it happens at a big space, and then we run out of pipeline. So all the companies which know and which believes that this pandemic is going to be over and things going to bounce back again, they are building a pipeline. And therefore, what recruiters are doing, they're also developing a lot of connections. Now, what it means to you? Okay, the recruiters are changing their approach. Now, what it means to you? Let me spend some time there, and that is there in the next slide. Yeah. So, how do you prepare yourself? And this is where I'm first kind of bringing the focus to very few small elements. It might sound little basic elements, but it might be very important for you to know. We already spoke about you going digital and technical and developing those skills. Please start preparing yourselves for video interviews. Now, why I'm saying prepare yourselves, all of you, when you go for jobs or or when you're going for an interview, you will definitely prepare a lot for the interview. But now preparing for video interview is little different. Like I said, in the video, you have to impress upon the person. You have to show those non-verbal elements that can only be picked up in a face-to-face, and therefore your communication also has to be very precise on how you tell them not only of what you know, also start conveying them what kind of a person you are. That is very important when you do for video interviews. So you should start preparing for those video interviews. Please stay connected in all the social medias as much as possible. On every day, I get at least 30 to 40 requests on LinkedIn of people trying to reach me just because they know that I'm the head of HR of a company. And I'm also kind of encouraging this connection. Most people do send messages. I don't reply to them honestly because there are so many messages that I reply, and I'm just talking as an HR person, and so does my recruiters as well. We accept all these connections. We don't reply to the emails because it takes a lot of time from us. But trust me, when a requirement comes, these are the individuals that we will remember who wrote to us, and then we will be writing back to them saying, hey, now we are hiring, we see that you have the skill, and therefore we would like to get in touch with you and know more about you. So please put some effort in staying connected in social media. Because of I'm going to repeat this again, because of their existing workload, transaction, number of emails that I get, you may not get a response from recruiters and HR people now, but when the time comes, you will know that. Now, this is and what is Wow's way of working? Please start thinking of success stories for yourself. Like, how many success stories do you have in a virtual way of working? In the past, you would have, used video conferencing and all that for managing projects. I'm sure some of you might be doing that currently. Please, kind of translate them to very short, successful stories that you can say. And if you can say this in an interview, this is the thing that I worked, virtually. My team was remote. It was all over the place. My stakeholders were remote. My customers were remote. And this project, I did this timeline. I delivered this, and we were successful. Just think me, who will not, think for yourself, who will not hire you, because you have a success story in a virtual way, and the future is going to be virtual. And with the virtual way of working moving more and more, there is a need for self-starters, self-managed people, and self-motivated people, because no longer you're going to have senior leaders, our bosses or whatever, standing next to us, patting our backs, giving us rewards and recognitions, recognizing us in gatherings. Those things are not going to happen. So the erstwhile traditional way which motivated people are not going to happen, and nobody is going to constantly stand next to you and ask you what is happening, have you done this, have you done that. So we are looking for more people who can be self-starters. They can also motivate themselves, and who can be less of management and they can manage themselves. So these are skills that you need to develop. And if you already have that, you have to also prepare your bullet points for interview, where in an interview, you kind of explicitly tell people, I am a self-starter, and here is an example. I am self-managed, here is an example. I am self-motivated, here is an example. Trust me, the recruiter or the hiring manager will be putting a lot of ticks on the questions that they have in their mind. Please develop this positive futuristic thinking, and especially I would like to say this for people who might have lost their jobs and who are looking for a new job. Normally what happens is, when we don't have a job, or we know that we are going to lose our job, a very high sense of insecurity creeps in, and we always have a feeling on every interview that I need this job. Right? There is nothing wrong in also telling the interviewer explicitly, I need this job. There is nothing wrong, but you have to be sure that the feeling of insecurity does not come out, the feeling of negativity does not come out. And even though you can honestly say that yes, I was laid off, but this was the reason, but I'm quite sure, and this is where I'm saying please have an industry picture, but I'm quite sure that the industry is moving ahead, therefore I look at it positively, and if I get this job, this is how I see I'm taking the job forward. If you use elements like this, talking about what you want to do to the future more than dwelling in your past, will also make you feel positive, and the positivity will come out in the interview and it will put you in the next step. Last but not the least, like I said, since recruiters are looking more for flexible roles, you should also show some flexibility, right? Now, when I'm saying this, because it could be my experience, like I said, I see project managers a little rigid to the methodology that they use or the industry domain that they represent. And they're rigid not because of their attitude, they're rigid because they are experts in that area. And they feel that they will be able to contribute more if they're in the domain because they see themselves as domain experts in that area. So here is where I will put a request to all of you. Please go one step above. You're already efficient project managers, and that's the bottom line. And please develop on the project management skills and see if you can be flexible across domains, because the mindsets of the hiring people, the recruiters, and also the industry people are changing. Earlier, we were also looking for domain specific, they should have strong knowledge in this domain. Now, our mind is also changing where we are saying, can we also look at more and more generic people who can do more things for us? So it will kind of balance each other if you also develop that flexibility. Now, these things are, very generic. Yeah, I see there is 2 more minutes, but I will try to keep it in 5 minutes or so. Going to the next slide again, I promised in the beginning of the session that I will use the same slide of those 10 elements and give you a little bit of what you should do in the project management slide. Sorry, project management function. Can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah. Now coming to interview preparedness, and like I said, you saw the same slide. The content is the same, just the title is different. Right now, when it comes to technology, what should you do about it? Pretty simple. I said PMI has introduced this term called technology quotient. All you need to do is you have to keep increasing your technology quotient. And my advice, personal advice, would be don't go after all the technologies. Take two. I mean, there is a limit to the number of technologies you can use in a day. So take two or three and probably increase your technology quotient in that element. And please do some research. There are a lot of blogs that are available, and I'm sure most of you would already be doing that. Please keep yourselves abreast on what are the changes that are happening, and especially in the area of automation. Right? Now, moving on to change, the second one, what you should do is be a little proactive. And again, be proactive will sound like a very generic term. Please note all the processes and procedures that are not being followed properly, and see how they can impact the process. Bring in those hybrid technologies that I said. Make the keep the policy flexible so that if there is a change, you can also quickly change the way the project goes in. Be more open for change, if not try and lead change and welcome change, and explicitly say and keep mentioning wherever possible that you are somebody who is open for change. The more and more you keep saying that I'm open for change, I'm open for change, trust me, it kind of gets into your mind and you become open for change. And then you are seen as a change management agent or a change leader and not a change resistor. So these are things that you can do. And like I said, if by there are certain objective elements also you can show by showing that you're change, not change resistant, but a change agent. Moving to risk is a subject that all of you would be aware, right? So please, you can also document some of those risks yourself that you envisage in your experience and say, these are the risks that I see. And the risk management or the risk manager will be very happy that you are already looking into this. You can start categorizing this risk by your client, by department, by the project type, whatever. So you are also in your mind welcoming this risk because you know that risk is coming and you know that this risk can cause some hindrance to your project. So you're aware it doesn't frustrate you. And by talking more of risk, you are also bringing the risk manager to your side, and they're not sitting, opposite to you and challenging you, but they're sitting in your side, and you both will be looking at, hey, how do we mitigate this risk? Because you both agree that there is a risk rather than conflicting on whether the risk exists or not. Uh, the next important element, collaboration. Please first create, if you're leading a project team, first please create an atmosphere for the team to discuss a lot, and then try and reach out to other people in the organization from whom you can get a lot of information which will help to your project, and also enable that in your project teams for them to reach out to other people and get as much information as possible. The more you speak to people and the more you tell them about the project and the more you involve them into your project will become successful, because there will be less and less people who will resist the project. And by doing this, you will also be indirectly touching on the change element, because normally what happens is, even though if you are a change leader, you are pushing the project in the right direction, the people who are not much aware of the project are the ones who will resist it, and then they will create some troubles. So the more you collaborate and the more they are aware, these resistances will also stop coming down, and then you will actually show that apart from being a project manager, you are also doing the role of a change manager. Right now, the gig economy, I think there is a lot and lot requirement which is also taking place now, and because of the pandemic only, it is even more increasing. So gig economy, I think all of you know that we are looking for people who are, in the part-time spaces, and they do multiple jobs and they do more short-term jobs. So if in your project, if you need to move ahead, if you need some resources, this is something that you also need to be open to. Now, I have seen this in the past. Again, project managers mostly focus on this favorite term called FTE. I need this many FTE in the project to run. That mentality has to slightly change. You of course need a few FTEs, but you could also look at some part-time resources who can just come and help you for that bit and go away. And by doing that, you also get some good experts, and you also kind of address the resource crunch. Focus on data. I spoke a lot on focus on data. So what you need to do from that element is, please incorporate data analysis into your process. Please use more and more data. And when it comes to interviewing, the focus on this, please have some examples of data analytics that you have done. Very small examples or precise examples. Please not only talk about how it contributed to the project, also try and take it to the next level of how it enabled the progress of the organization. It could be pumping into a decision making system, it could have been into a business analytics solution, or it could have been to a big organizational growth, whatever. But please have the full end story. This is where the project scope started, this is where the project scope ended. We delivered it successfully. This is the role that data played, and by the way, this is how it helped the overall organization. That will be a fantastic story for you to tell. Emotional intelligence, right? I said a lot on emotional intelligence on what we did. It's becoming the buzzword today. And again, if what is emotional intelligence is nothing but a person's ability to recognize their own potential as well as the people's emotions who are working with them. Again, if you bring in some of those people element and the human element, and if you have some examples of how you used emotional intelligence as a driving factor to understand customers and stakeholders' expectations and how you delivered, that will be another fantastic story for you to say. Hybrid methodologies. Again, regardless of what method you employ to successfully complete your project, you will definitely need a lot of tools. So have some of these lists of tools that you used and other tools or project methodologies that you used as an example again to portray that saying, okay, this project was using, let's say, a traditional waterfall methodology. The whole project was this, but for this element we decided that it could probably be suitable if we use agile scrum, because it becomes more and more. By using that, if you see, there are multiple things that you convey. It all depends on how you structure this. I had a project waterfall, agile came in, so you're saying you are using a hybrid methodology, and then you're saying we used the in agile we brought in the human element. You are saying, okay, there is an emotional intelligence part here, and then this brought in a change in this thing where we collaborated with a few people on the impact of it. You're conveying two things. I am collaborating, and at the same time I'm also leading a change here. Just see how having just one concrete example with all these elements will show all these things. And I will nicely take it into all of this by saying these are the new tools that I learned, these are the new methodologies that I learned, and this is how I trained my team to perform. You are demonstrating that you are a person who is continuously learning, and therefore, it also translates to something that you will continuously improve. You can actually put a whole story to so your interview will not be just like an interview where you are answering to the point, but you can structure it like you are explaining your whole career journey with all these elements in place. And if you put it in a nice way, now trust me, who will not hire you? And especially when it is done in a virtual way, when this whole thing comes in, it also talks a lot about your behavioral traits. And if this story comes out very well, and if you look at me as a person who's applying for the job, of course, I did it in bits and pieces. But if I am telling you this as a story of my project management journey with these elements, and then also tell you, okay, if I get this job, that is how I'm going to take this forward, and that is how I'm going to perform, will you not hire me? Right? On that note, I think that's the end of my session, and I will pass it back to Saujanya.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dinesh. We just were riveted by the entire session. I think I was
Good to hear
making
that.
copious notes regarding this as well.
Awesome.
Very well connected the future of work, which we all of us as project managers we have been so anxious about and trying to embrace the new normal, let's call it, and then helping us with the way in which an interview has to be dealt with. Till now, we have been doing that all our life, but suddenly this thing has put a new spin on things. Thank you so much for giving us the HR viewpoint. Yes,
Pleasure is mine.
thank you. Please stay on some more time. We will be conducting a poll just to understand the nature of the audience that we have here so that we can plan our future programs as well. Are we ready with the poll? Yes. We have 3 minutes to answer the four questions. The poll has appeared on the right side of your screen, right under chat. Friends, I would request you to take the poll. People who are not speakers, please mute your microphones. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. We have got good enough responses, but we have 35 people more to respond. We have a few more minutes. Please go ahead and answer these. They're not PMP questions. They're very, very simple questions. Please go ahead. Uh, we have 107 participants as of now. Dr. Dinesh, just to reiterate, we have quite a few interesting questions, but I would request that we will take that after Srikantam's session so that we can have a nice handshake between you both as well. Would
Sure,
that be
sure.
okay, Dr. Dinesh? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also eager to attend Srikanth's session, so I'm going to stay on till the end. So I'm there.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So, all right. Are we done with 3 minutes? The poll has ended. 10 more seconds and 16 more people to go. Can we please, whoever remaining, please take the poll? All right. Those are the results of today's polls. Thank you so much. We have quite a few members from PMIPCC, and then welcome to the other folks who joined us as well. And yes, we have quite a few repeaters who have attended the earlier Career Series Enabler episode 1, and most of them have seen our mailer. That's wonderful to know. And yeah, most of the folks who are attending today's session are certified project managers. Thank you so much for that poll, and we will move on to the second session of the day. This is by Srikantam Vadari, and it deals more from a project manager's point of view. Srikantam is a PMP, CSM, ITIL, and he's working currently as the Director of Project Management at Info Global Solutions. He is a senior PMP working as a Director Project Management with an experience of more than 23 years and in one of the best ERP vendors in the world, owning the international project management portfolio and managing a team of project and program managers, each managing multi-million-dollar deals, as well as a multi-year ERP implementation programs for large customers across the globe. If you remember, Infor was Ban earlier, and Srikantam started his career with Ban, and he has stayed on for 23 long years. As a passionate project manager, he has provided project management PMP certification preparation programs to more than 2,000 aspirants and has helped them in clearing their PMP certification. For the new folks, let me tell you, Srikantam has been with PMIPCC since more than a decade, I think 15 years or more. And he has been a star facilitator for the PMP sessions for individuals and corporate alike. Welcome, Srikantam, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Over to you.
Suma, thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. Good morning, all of you. Hope you had a wonderful session given by Dr. Dinesh. So, in fact, I take the privilege to take few topics from my side. On onset, I definitely want to say my gratitude and thanks to PMI for arranging such a wonderful session, which is very useful, very, very important and useful for a lot of people. Thank you to start with. Uh, in fact, I have organized this presentation around most of the important elements around the core project management elements. So instead of going into each of these line items one by one, maybe first let's start with the building blocks, because the building blocks are the most important ones which decide whether you are working as a very conventional project manager or as a digital era project manager. The foundation doesn't change. So in fact, can you please move to the next slide? So in fact, if you really see, of course, also as Dr. Dinesh presented in his the slide, the 5 key elements. So in fact, I've just represented it with the 3 top elements or the 3 building blocks. So your people, meaning your very, very essential and important key stakeholders, be it customer, be it project team, or be it a project sponsor. and what are the processes and what methodologies that you use, whether again you use a waterfall methodology or agile or any sorts of methodology. What is that, and what are the tools and templates which not only for the project management but for the effective delivery of the project, because project manager is just not a one entity. Project manager needs to make sure that the overall delivery of the project gets completed in a successful way. And the most important thing, again, going back to the three key stakeholders that I mentioned. So even though you might have umpteen number of stakeholders that you are talking about, so those people who are influencing your project or those people who are getting influenced out of your project, always for me, the top three would always be customer, your project team, and sponsor. Why? Without a customer, there is no project. Without project team, you can't execute a project. And someone unless gives you an authorization to go ahead and do it, someone who wants to make this project run, without that person the project doesn't exist. So you might have lots of other stakeholders, and when we say that these are the top three stakeholders that we always need to keep in mind, let's also understand what are the key expectations from each of these such important stakeholders that look for the final successful project. Because at the end of the day, no one wants a failed project. Though we might say, okay, even today, we are not really there with 100% of the success rate. So whether you are uh, doing an IT project, whether you're doing a manufacturing project, the key stakeholders still remain the same. And from the customer's perspective, what is that they actually look for? The most important thing they look for is whatever product, whatever service that you're going to offer them, that needs to come in with the agreed quality and on time. That's the end result. But is that all what they look for? No. In fact, at any point in time, because it's not gone are those conventional days where you say, okay, the project gets over, and only then you would really see towards the user acceptance test, the customer starts really seeing the deliverables, whether it has come up the way what they wanted and all that stuff. No, many people want to see the minimum viable product as early as possible to see whether the team is moving in the right direction, yes or no. So for this, one of the very, very essential thing is always a transparent and a periodic communication. So what do you communicate? How do you communicate is a big topic by itself. But one of the very essential thing is to making sure that always you're giving the transparent communication. Why did I use the word transparent? It is just not like you are doing something, you set a weekly status report. Yes, I'm sure each of you are sending your weekly status reports. But does that weekly status report provide the right information of the status of the project and what customer is actually looking for? And is it really giving the honest information? So without these information, without this communication reaching customers confidence would definitely not be at their best. And without customers confidence not being at the best, it's absolutely impossible to deliver the best and result oriented project. Now moving on to the next important stakeholder. So the project team. Why is project team so important? Because see, in fact, if I see a project manager uh, is actually wanting to be the project manager for the next project as well by a team, then in fact that's one of the biggest achievement for from the project management manager's perspective, I would say. Because the team member should feel, yes, I want to work with this project manager because it's giving me the learning experience that I want, and I'm able to enhance in my career. So in fact, nobody would want to say that, okay, I'm working for this project, let me finish this project and then move on. So in fact, just moving on is not what we want. So the bonding between the project team members and the project managers has to get solidified, and when the project team members start feeling that yes, this is the guru, this is the person from whom I could learn a lot of things, this is the person who would help me to enrich my skills. And believe me, you all would agree with me, when a project manager leaves an organization, there are a big chance that a big chunk of team, it applies for project manager, for a leader, that many people also follow them. It is the influence that the project manager and or the leader, so who would create that sort of aura and make sure that the team members would follow them, not only just for that particular project but for the longer run. So that tells another important element, the project manager's role on the project team, just not getting the deliverables done. That's not the core objective. And the third stakeholder, project sponsor, unless we are doing a project for charity, which I believe not the case in many times, what is that sponsor is looking for? Sponsor is looking for maximized project revenue, maximized margin. So how do you achieve this? And when you have an opportunity to see new business opportunity, again, the project manager role, gone are those days when where we see, okay, the boundary has been very confined. I want to make sure that the project is successfully delivered. Is that what we are looking for? No. Project manager is a brand ambassador. Project manager is able to generate more business with his customer for the organization. So when the customer is really having that confidence, and when the customer becomes a referenceable customer, obviously every new opportunity, every new business scenario that they have, the first thing that they would think is, wow, why not go with this team? Why not go with this organization? Because they have done such a fabulous job. So in fact, that absolutely creates that platform for project manager also to give enough leads to the sales team so that they could really work on the commercials, and the pre-sales team works on and gets all the needed stuff, and makes sure that it is just not a one-time assignment, but it is a long-term relationship with customer. So the project manager having that sort of relationship with customer, making sure additional business is generated for the sponsor, is one of the very essential and important thing these days every project manager is looked upon for. So if you say that, okay, I was just doing my own project, that's not sufficient. Okay, while we'll use the process and methodologies, yeah, can you please move to the next slide? So we will see, where do we start the project? So we all need to start the project somewhere. So of course, you need to get the information from the sales team. So first thing I would ask any person, if I were the project manager, the first thing I would ask is, okay, what is this? What is the business case? So why is the customer actually wanting to get this project done? So once I understand what is the real business need of the customer, then I would actually go on with understanding the requirements. So only when you really understand, and in fact, again, most of you would agree with me, many projects fail apart from the communication that generically everyone would agree. Many projects would fail because the teams have failed to understand the requirements in its right context. So sometimes the requirements are explicit, sometimes the requirements could be implicit. So now as a project manager, yes, it's an easy statement to make that, okay, you need to understand your requirements. The question would be, how? How do you make sure that the requirements are understood well? So this is where we use the tools like Moscow. Of course, we'll also discuss that in the when we are discussing about the scope of the project. I'm not talking about the capital of Russia, but of course, the prioritization of requirements, where you would definitely say, what are those must-have requirements without which your project absolutely sees no finish line? And what are those uh, must have, then what are those should have? So those are the requirements. Yes, they are there. It's always welcome. And you also need to identify from the requirements, you need to translate always to the right scope. So have you defined your scope well? So because that's a very important aspect, many project managers find it a little challenging to translate your requirements to scope, because you're not, end of the day, remember what you're running the project is not for the requirements but for the scope, because your requirements could be creating multiple projects, each of it having its own create well defined boundaries, each of it would having its own well defined scope. So how are you able to translate those requirements to scope is one very important element what we would definitely look for a project manager's ability. Because if you have not been able to translate and you are able to, you have included some of those not needed requirements also into the scope, what is happening? Then either your schedule is getting elongated and you are actually if it is a fixed fee, again it depends whether you are talking about a fixed fee project or a time and material project. If it's a fixed fee project and you are including some of those requirements which are actually not really so essential for customer and you are still building them, that means you are actually consuming more than what needs to be consumed in the project. Your project profitability is directly getting hit, your margins are directly getting hit. So you understanding the priority of the requirements and translating those requirements into scope is absolutely essential. And and just on the scope, other than the scope part, what is that you want to do in this project? What is your governance model? How would you want to store your issues and risks? How do you want to track them? How are you going to make your change management work? Everything, your Bible, Bhagavad Gita, Quran is your project management plan. So typically, a project management plan as well defined helps you to run your project as smooth as possible. So in fact, if you say that okay, my project was a very small project, I was not needing a project management plan, then it is already to doubt some of the elements of project management credibility. So big or small, maybe the amount of information, the amount of content that you would want to package in your project management plan, how detailed you would write might differ from the based on the complexity, but no project should ever start without having a well-defined project management plan, which is reviewed with customer and if possible signed off by customer. Because then you are having a very clear understanding with your customer that, okay, this is what we are going to do, this is how we are going to do. So both are well defined. And also at the same time, let me tell you one more thing. For many people, project means only the activities what their organization does. No. If you are any moment having that idea in your shell, please remove it. If you are not focusing on the activities what customer also needs to do, then you are bound to fail, because the project is the collective set of activities, both what your team needs to do, what customer team also needs to do. I'm sorry. If you're not really focusing on those activities, I'm sorry. In case, if any of your activities having an external dependency on customer's activity, how would you know whether that activity is going to get delayed, get impacted, or you would not be able to do it at all? So to avoid this, always you need to make sure that you're not only focusing on your activities, but also the customer's activities, in case if there are certain things. And where do you collate all this information from? Of course, you would have to get this information from your proposal materials, because for every customer, they would start with the RFI, RFP, and then we would make the proposal materials. So these are your starting points, which gets translated to your signed contracts and creates your statement of work, which is the basis for your project charter and your project management plan. So this also gives you at a very high level, what are your duration, resource durations and estimates, cost estimates. So all these things, and not to forget about whether you are doing all these activities by your own organization, or is the third party also getting involved. So if a third party is involved for whatever piece of the work in the project, what is the agreement that you have with the third party? Is it again well defined? Is it a signed contract? Because nothing in the project should be oral, nothing in the project should be left open to imagination. Everything should be well documented, then you would have more control. So if you have absolute control, then the success of the project is more likely and higher likely. And last but not least, before you take up a project, one of the fundamental things that you would definitely want to make sure is whether you would be able to successfully do this project. So remember, there's also a new term called as fail fast. In case if the project is unlikely to be achieved, rather than consuming 80% of the project budget, if you are able to tell that 10 with the 10% of the budget itself that you would not be able to do the project, then it will be more saving to the customer and also to your performing organization. So that's also a very important point, that you need to make sure that you have a well-defined high-level risk baseline assessed. Can you please move to the next slide? So we already spoke about the key stakeholders. Who are they, and what is important from each of these key stakeholders. One of the most important thing that as a project manager always we need to keep in mind is, in case if there are conflicting requirements from two key stakeholders, how are we managing that? So always lean towards what is the project management plan speaking about. So you would definitely have scenarios where there would be a scenario where the CIO of a customer wants the most recent technology or the most recent upgrade facilities available, and at the same time the CFO of the organization would want to minimize the cost. So both are right in their perspectives. So how do you make sure that the project doesn't suffer and still you would achieve what you would want to achieve? These are the areas where your project management plan has already well defined. And in fact, if the requirements has a conflict, you need to make an alignment which is more likely for the project management plan. What is that you have agreed to do? So that helps you to resolve the conflicts and move further on. And at any point in time, unless you have a well-defined stakeholder register, of course, this is again not a very theoretical thing that we are talking about, having a stakeholder register. It's still very essential to understand who are those people who influence your project, who could even get your project stopped. Who are those people who could help you to pull you out of a difficult situation? So unless you really have a well-defined stakeholder register, you would not be able to successfully run the project. Can you please move to the next slide? So now we already spoke about the scope, but again, many times one of the very essential thing what people miss out is on the assumptions part. When we talk about the assumptions, why is the assumptions so important? In fact, in one of the interviews, I was asking a person, uh, how do you get your assumptions listed from? So the person was telling, oh, we have a repository of previous assumptions from the previous projects, and we have taken them and put it in our project management plan. So is that the right way? Absolutely not, because every project is unique. The purpose of having assumptions is just not for sake of writing few assumptions in your project management plan and to get it signed. More generic assumptions that you mention in your project management plan, less likely it helps you. So in fact, if you are really focusing on explicit assumptions related to this project, then more likely that your project is under control. One is the assumptions is extremely important. The second one, and a very funny incident, is one of our own project manager in the project management plan. He was mentioning in the out of scope section, anything not in scope is out of scope. Then we were just wondering, if anything not in scope is to be mentioned in out of scope, why do we need to have that section? So it's not just whatever is not in the scope is out of scope. We need to make sure from the experience, what are those things customers would perceive as scope, which you want to explicitly tell to customer, hey, look, this might be perceived as in scope, but we want to make sure that this is absolutely out of scope. So we need to uh, be creative, understand customer, and that's exactly where I was telling how you create rapport with customer. Once you start understanding the customer's culture, and once you start talking to them more informally, frequently, then you would start understanding what were their thoughts. Then you would really start understanding, oh, looks like these key users or these important people at the customer side are assuming these are part of the scope. Is it really part of the scope? No, it's not part of the scope. So those are the elements that you really need to make sure that are put in out of scope. Have a discussion upfront and have even a difficult discussion, uncomfortable discussion at the beginning of the project, rather than both of you trying to keep it slow and low at that point in time. And when we are in the bigger scheme of things, then identifying, no, this was not discussed, and now we need to take care of that. That's going to be extremely challenging stuff. And now the next important thing at any point in time is the acceptance. Acceptance is the criteria that you would define for each of the component or each of the deliverable that you would produce from the project. Because again, we don't want to really wait till end of the project. We want to make sure as and when the project deliverable is coming up, we want to have some sort of demo. And once the project, the component gets developed in its entirety, which is a minimum viable product, we want to make sure that the customer really has tested it and signed off that yes, it meets their expectation criteria or it meets their acceptance criteria. So this connects back also with your requirements traceability matrix, where for every requirement, because you have already translated your requirements into scope. So now when you are delivering each of these components, the deliverables, how are you translating it back to the requirements stating that, yes, these requirements have been met through these deliverables. So this is going to help in your testing. This is going to help the customer also understand that, yes, out of the must-have requirements that we agreed to be developed as part of this project, yes, all these have been done. Then we are good to go with the go live, or the product is ready to be launched, or whatever it is. And off late, what one of the very important things that we are seeing is the third party integrations. So many things which are well within your control, the project team is taking with much more ease and comfort. But when it comes to third party integrations, that's a for many projects, it's a gray area because you need to understand whether the third party integration is bidirectional, meaning your application needs to speak to third party and the communication comes back, or is it only one way communication? How does it happen? Is the interface already available, or is it to be built? What sort of technology needs to be built? So all these things have to be well thought through before you really define your big scheme of things. And I'm sure many of you who are working for ERP implementations understand a very key word called business blueprint. Business blueprint is the document which tells the overall solution, how it would come up by the time the project would actually come up. So it's like exactly like your blueprint of your house. So your blueprint, once a three-dimensional blueprint is made, then you are actually building your house according to that blueprint. So same is the case here. This business blueprint helps you to develop the components or configure the components and make sure the customers' needs are and the expectations are met. So these are some of the things that we would want to make sure. And in this point, I want to make sure two important things that we would definitely want to touch base are scope creep. How would you define scope creep? What is scope creep? When do you call the scope is getting increased? That's number one. And number two, when is that you are asking for a change request, and when is that you are saying that yes, it's part of the scope item and we need to take it up? So because this is again one of the very ambiguous areas where you say it's a change request, customer says no, it's in scope item, you need to do it again within the boundary of the project. So how we, for project managers, one of the things that we would definitely say is how well you are defining what your scope is, so that there are less ambiguous moments where it is an in-scope item or a CR, the more smoother conversations you would have with customer. And finally, there would be some scenarios, yes, in fact, it could be in scope and the team has missed it. And in such situations, how are you going to use your contingencies? So because obviously it's going to hit your project profitability, it's going to hit your project margins. So you definitely need to minimize those. And in many organizations, what they also do is, so in fact, they would make it so difficult to release contingency that it is much more easy to go to customer and get a CR approved. So if your management is really making it very stringent to release contingency, as a project manager, you might say, oh my God, instead of speaking to this particular authorized person who releases contingency, it's extremely difficult to convince that person. Rather, I would go and convince my customer and get it approved as a CR. And that's, of course, a trick where you would really want to get more CR. Of course, that really does goes with the well-defined homework that you have done. No customer would also want to pay unless it's really okay on their side as well. Can we move to the next slide, please? Moving on to the schedule part, of course, these days we are using many tools. So a lot of organizations even today use Microsoft Project or Excel or Open Project or Clarity, or whatever tool that they would use. More important is not what is the tool that you are using, but what is important is how well you are maintaining your data and how well you are updating your data, because your data is your power. In fact, as Dr. Dinesh also said, not only in the conventional days, as we move in the digital era, your data is your power. So when you are really having accurate data, many times you would make your decisions based on your data. So that's extremely important, how often you would update your schedule. Have you created your baseline? What is a baseline? So it's very important to understand what a baseline is and how often you would update baselines. You don't update baselines every day. So when are those moments when you really need to update your baselines? And it's also important to understand what are those scheduling metrics which are very key, how are they tracked and how are they reported? Because that tells you how much control you are having on the project schedule, whether your project is ahead of time, behind the schedule, or going as per what it should go. So again, a lot of parameters that would decide assumptions would definitely have a lot of influence on your schedule. And more importantly, one of the parameters that we would definitely want to make have a look at is critical path. So is it possible to have more critical paths than one? Yes. What is the challenge for a project manager if the critical paths are more than one? So more the number of critical paths, higher the challenge. Because if it was only one critical path, you shrink the duration. Probably that critical path is not a critical path anymore. Your next near critical path becomes a critical path. But in this scenario where there are more than one critical paths, even if you shrink few items on one of your critical paths, your project duration is not shrinking. So how are you defining your critical paths? What are you doing with your critical paths is also extremely important. And of course, this is where your tools help you. Microsoft Project sort of tools definitely helps you to understand how many critical paths you have and how you could manage your critical paths. The other terms, your ATD, actuals to date, your estimate to complete, your actuals at complete. So these are the terms that you would always want to have at your fingertips at any point in time so that you really know, again, whether you're on your schedule or ahead of schedule and all that stuff. And not to forget about the early warning trends. So again, as we said, it is better to fail fast rather than executing the project and running the project till the last minute and realizing that you will not be able to proceed any further. Okay. Can we move to the next slide? Okay. So the other important things are your on the what tools that you are using on the project financials, how your cost types are defined, uh, and at any point in time, how are you making sure that the cash flow is always positive? So you always need to make sure that the project revenue is well defined, well maintained, and it is always better than what you have anticipated. And again, here also we would definitely want to make sure that the contingency, how is contingency used and when is contingency used? Do you have a sort of financial tracker as a tool? So how you are making use of the tool? Uh, it could be your in-house tool. It could be a tool which is made as simple as with an Excel. So always you would want to make sure that the project finances are under your control. Can we move to the next slide, please? In wake of time. Okay, these are some of the things that most of you would obviously know. So you're right. Your risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies. What sort of collaboration tools that you are using? What sort of tools that you are using to track these risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies? How often you are discussing these items with your customer, and more importantly, how you're foreseeing the potential issues. So Unless you foresee your potential issues, then you would not be able to run it. It is just not like, okay, tracking few items and stuff like that, making sure that it is absolutely you are on top of it, you are discussing with customer and moving further from there. So can we move to the next slide? So in fact, what we definitely want to, what we want to make sure is that as we move in the interviews, what sort of questions people would see the questions. They would definitely get questions like, okay, how was your governance model defined? So in fact, what was your weekly status reports typically containing? So in fact, see, the most important thing is how do you communicate with customer with the transparent items that you would always, you are on top of the project, and what does your steering committee presentations have? So again, as we already spoke about a few minutes back, so how is the data-driven decisions taken? So the data-driven decisions are very, very important. So in fact, the most important things is just not about having the data. It is about taking the decisions based on the data. So what were the key challenges in managing the stakeholders? What are the communication needs? So in fact, if we understand what exactly the customers or the other important stakeholders need, then we would be able to provide a better and effective project management, project governance. Can we move to the next slide, please? So on the other important things, it's also important to understand uh, how many cycles of demo you plan, how many cycles of test you are planning. Again, these are some of the things would tell how well you understood your project. What are your key quality metrics? How would you define your acceptance criteria? So, and these are some of the very essential things, making sure that you understand to meet the customer's requirements and objectives. So finally, customer needs to sign off on your deliverables, stating that yes, this met the objective. So further, most important thing is your demos and your own tests and the customer's tests. How well you have done that. Can we move to the next slide? And last but not least, uh, as we already spoke about, team is the most important, one of the most important stakeholders. So how well you are making sure that the team is onboarded the way it needs to be onboarded. So do you have a proper onboarding checklist? Do you have a proper offboarding checklist? What sort of working environment that you have created? So what are those effective tools that you provide to the team to make sure that they provide the right delivery? So it's not only for the project management tools, we also need to think through what are those essential tools that the team needs to provide the best delivery. Because if the team doesn't have the right tools and templates, half of their time could go in creating the tools and templates, which would be a productivity loss. So it's also important that we get the right resources with right skills on board, and we also provide them right tools for effective project delivery. Yeah, that's what I had.
All right, Srikantam, thank you so much for that exhaustive list of what a project manager needs to keep track of when he is looking at probably facing the interviews as well as talking about his projects, so on and so forth. So, any direct tips for all of us, since most of us would be attending interviews or are in the process of interviewing soon? What would you ask us?
Uh, is that question to me, Suma?
Yes, Srikantam.
Okay. So one of
I
the
couldn't
first things.
resist. I didn't wait for the Q&A to start. I couldn't resist asking the question at you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the first things that we would definitely want to make sure is what sort of tools that they are using today. So in fact, as we already spoke about, the concepts are important, but to build on these concepts, what are the tools that they're using? For example, in fact, someone says, okay, we are using Microsoft Project. So in Microsoft Project, we definitely would want to understand what are those elements that they are aware of. We would definitely ask what is the forward loading of resources, what sort of reports that they would generate from Microsoft Project to understand where is the project and how well they're able to track it. And similarly on the project finance, financial management, how is that the revenue is calculated? So in fact, we want to make sure that the people understand what is a revenue and how is that they are calculating the revenue today, so that and what things that they have done to upkeep the revenue the way it has to be done.
Okay.
So, and similarly on the leading teams, it's more on the soft skills part. Of course, Dr. Dinesh already spoke about those things. So, other thing is also on the change management. So, typically, how would you, what are those negotiation points that you would discuss with customer when customer says it's a in scope item and you are saying it's a change?
Okay. So, yeah, thanks for that tips, Srikantam. We now move on to the Q&A session. That is, the panel will be open to both Dr. Dinesh as well as Srikantam, because while from the interviewee perspective, that is us, for us, we will be answering to both facets, that is you as a project manager as well as the HR manager perspective. So, guys, open to interviews. You may unmute yourself and ask your question directly. Please specify to whom you are addressing the question to. Over to the audience.
Hi, am I audible? Hello. Hello, Suma. Am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, you are audible. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm Sachin. I'm from Pune chapter. Thank you. My question is to both speakers actually. Do you think with in this current pandemic situation is the right opportunity to change the job? That's my first question. And second question is maybe out of scope related to the current topic, but as a project manager, I feel a challenge of building a rapport and trust if you are joining virtually or if anybody is joining virtually in your team. So how to, do you really see this as a challenge first, and how to overcome maybe that?
All right. Let me help you there. Dr. Dinesh, would you kindly answer the first question that Sachin asked? Is this the right time to look out for a job change? Sachin, am I putting that question right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Dr. Dinesh?
Yeah, thanks, Suma. I don't. For some reason, I did expect that the question will get directed to me.
Okay.
For the nature of the questions, and I'm happy to answer that. But before I get into the answer, I would also like to thank Srikanth for a wonderful session, because I almost felt like I attended a short capsule on project management training. Very nicely taking through every element of project management. Quite a few things I learned myself. So thanks, Srikanth, for a great session. And to to answer the question from Pankaj, I guess.
Sachin.
Sachin.
Sachin, sorry.
No, it's
So is it the right time to change the job? What I would say is at this point in time, all of us are safe where we are. And I say this with a lot of conviction on myself. If we have a job and if it is going well, if there is no threat to the current job and we feel we are successful and adding value to the organization, the best thing is to be where you are, also from a safety perspective. That would be my first suggestion. The second is, if for whatever reason, even if you have a job, if you are looking for a change, if a company is hiring a project manager at this point in time, there is some kind of an indirect indication that the company is progressive. They are talking about a new project or an existing project. They are talking about adding new workforce into their system, and therefore it is not a bad idea to change if there is an opportunity coming your way. I will not advise going out of your way and looking for a change because, like I said, the situation is quite uncertain around us. And if our current situation is more certain and if we are able to envisage things, I would recommend we stay where we are. The second part, the second question was trust. So if you're already working with an existing team, I think we should just continue building on the trust. I do agree that it becomes a little difficult to build trust on a virtual environment. That is where having a precise communication, having a lot of facts, data, and information in what you speak will help you build credibility in the first place. And trust comes after credibility. So people have to get that sense that okay, this person talks things that are relevant. They back it up with fact, and whatever they bring in is true. And it also very important that you also accept wherever you are wrong. You accept you are wrong rather than trying to justify. These are very simple things that you do and demonstrate that you are a honest, transparent person. Then credibility and trust automatically falls in place. That would be my simple recommendation as first steps in this journey.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh. I think I'll read out the questions that are here first before taking the others in interest of people who ask the questions first. Let me just begin. This is from Surya Gudala. What are the career opportunities in project management domain? Project manager, senior project manager, and what next? I would let you between Srikantam and you decide that.
Yeah, I'll take that question, Suma.
Thank
So
you,
in
Srikantam.
fact, yeah, in fact, for in many of the organizations after senior project manager, so there are positions like delivery executive. So delivery executive runs a big program, probably running multi-million dollars, spanning across multiple sites, multiple locations, and stuff like that. And the direct progression of the delivery executive could be into one of the vice president roles. So in fact, as you can understand, first you might be working on one or two small projects, then probably you are taking care of entire project by yourself. Then maybe you are working for a program or a project where multiple project managers are involved, and from that stage, you would move on to typically now the titles that are floating in industry are project director, senior project director. Then you would have a delivery executive, and the transgression from there would be to the vice president.
Okay, okay. Does that answer your question, Surya?
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you. And the next question from Prasad Venulaganti regarding change management. Will any accredited certificate help? Which one would you suggest?
I can probably take that. I am aware that there is one certification. I think it is called Certified Change Management Professional. It comes from Association of Change Management, and probably there are a few other things. Now, when I talk about certifications in general, they definitely stand out. They make your CV stand out. because you are talking about a specific skill or a behavior or a capability that you bring in. And the certification is kind of a testimony that here is an individual who demonstrates learnability, and there is a kind of an endorsement by an authority that this person has done this. So that's where it will help. But having said that, having a certification is not going to help you to get a job. Having a certification might help your resume getting shortlisted. You still have to back the story of certification with a strong experience. And like I said during my speech, you should have at least one concrete example of how you managed a change management process effectively. So a good practical story backed with a certification will definitely pave you a way so that you get up the up pretty quickly in the hiring process. That way it would help. And I'm not talking only about the certification for change management. I'm talking about any certification in general. They should always be backed up with your practical experience.
Okay, that helps a lot, Dr. Dinesh. Thank you. There is another question for you. I will ask while we are with you. When we speak about project management to be tech savvy, is it essential that they get into the intricacies of these technologies and have hands-on, or just an idea overview of these technologies will be sufficient?
Uh,
That's in Kapil Sen.
Correct. Good question. I think it is, and probably Srikanth might build on this. You know, if it goes into in depth, I'm more going to give an answer from an HR perspective. It purely depends on the requirement of the role. If the project requires the project manager also to be deeply skilled in particular technology, then probably yes, there will be a requirement. But if the requirement is again to have a high level knowledge, then it is that way. As a generic advice, if I have to give again, what I would suggest is the project managers at least to be aware of some of these relevant tools in the market and should be able to say that I know about this tool and I know the basic functionality of the tool, if not in-depth knowledge. Because again, you are saying that okay, there is a good amount of knowledge you have in the industry. And the second thing is again have an example. For example, you can, like I said during the speech also, there was this project that was using the waterfall model, and there was this agile scrum, and there was an associated tool. I was not aware of the tool at all, but I was asked to use it. I learned quickly and I implemented it. By doing that, what you're saying is, okay, I know that this is a tool, and you're indirectly saying I don't have in-depth, but if there is a need, I am a quick learner and I can quickly learn and deploy. So you're showing that your learnability. Again, it sums up the whole story. I might be saying this again and again. It all goes back to how do you articulate this in the interview and cover the gap of your knowledge by the learnability skill that you have and carrying that very nicely linking to your past experience. That is more important here.
Yeah, adding further to what Dr. Dinesh said, see, in fact, we need to understand what percentage of the role is project management and what percentage of the role is the domain expertise needed. See, there would be scenarios where a person is expected to work as a project manager as well as a domain expert in some of the smaller projects. But when we are moving towards the bigger and bigger projects, ideally, what we would always tend to tell to everyone is that let's demarcate it. Of course, I completely agreeing with Dr. Dinesh that the project manager should definitely have the know-how of the domain expertise, be it on the technology side or on the functionality side. We need to understand for a bigger project where a project manager entity in itself needs a full-time capacity, then probably it makes sense to have another resource who's a subject expert. So it all depends on the magnitude of the project, the nature of the project, where the person is working.
Okay, thank you, Srikantam. We had two different facets of answering the question, both from the HR as well as the PM side. Srikantam, while we are with you, let me ask another question asked by Swati. What are some of the metrics that a project manager can use to self-assess?
So metrics, sorry, I missed your last part. Can you say it again?
metrics that a project manager can use to self-assess. Swati, if you're online, can you come online and you may want to clarify? Are you
Yes,
there?
that is a question I had. Project manager, how can he or her, he can self-assess?
Oh, okay, self-assess. Okay. Uh, one of the ways to self-assessment is certification. Doing a project management is a self-assessment by itself. And of course, as I already talked about, one of the other avenues for self-assessment is the three stakeholders. Again, I go back to the same stuff. Whether you are able to create a referenceable customer end of the project, whether your team members want to work with you again, and whether the project sponsor wants to assign more projects to you, more complex, tells you you're in the right direction or not. Does that answer
Okay.
your question?
To a point. So, are there any direct metrics that a project manager can use? Like we use metrics all the time to assess the health of a project. So, same way, can he assess? Can you use some metrics to see how he is doing?
Project manager's assessment directly comes out from the success of the project, what he or she is running. So, in fact, if whether the person is working only for one project or multiple projects, based on the outcome of those projects, the project manager could be assessed. But again, assessment always is a little subjective. So it cannot be purely based on a number saying that okay, because he or she has run a successful project, this would be the weight. Of course, you could have your own 360-degree review coming from each of the individuals, and also the feedback from customer themselves directly. So it is not purely a number based one, but more a subjective based assessment.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Srikantam, for that. Uh, Another question for you, Srikantam. What is the difference between business blueprint and program roadmap? This is from Vinod Kumar.
Program roadmap is more in the development sort of projects where you would define what are those features that you are building in a particular product. Say for example, you have 10 features that you would want to add to an existing product, and you are saying that okay, in you are having three releases. So in first release, what are those three or four features that are coming up, and in the second release, what are those features that are coming up? That's the product roadmap. While business blueprint is a completely different ball game. Business blueprint is your overall solution, how it would look like. It would tell, okay, in case you are creating either something from scratch, or whether you are using a pre-existing software and making few configuration changes. So end of the day, the combination of those configuration changes plus what new components that you are building in, all put together, the overall end-to-end solution, how does it look like, is defined by business blueprint. Does that answer?
Yes, Srikant. So can I put it this way? Let's say when I'm building a complex when I'm developing a complex product where there are multiple vendors involved in some piece of data integration and stuff like that. So is it ideal way to come up with the business blueprint first and then derive your roadmap further along?
Absolutely possible. So business blueprint would tell finally what you would end up creating. And for that, you might say that, okay, I would want to probably do in multiple phases or multiple parts or multiple waves, whatever you call it as. And you might say in first phase, I would build these three features. And in the second phase, I would build these next set of features. So your business blueprint is the overall umbrella.
Got you. Thank you, sir. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Srikantam and Vinod, for that question. The next question is to Dr. Dinesh. Um, this is from Mahesh. Sorry, Rakesh. Dr. Dinesh, you're there?
Yes, I'm there.
Oh, okay. This is from Rakesh. He says, you talked on non-verbal communication and difficulties to execute them over video interviews. What are the specifics you as a HR look for in video interviews or telephonic interviews?
Sure. In both cases, again, in video interviews, it is a little easier than telephonic interviews to observe the body language to some extent, because we can see the individual to some extent, we can read their facial expressions and things like that. So I will separate these two out. First, talking about the common things in both. Be very clear and precise in your answer. The bush in the answer, and try to avoid as much as possible to speak about generic stuff which may tend to distract the interviewer, number one, and it will also create a perception in the interviewer's mind that you probably did not understand the question well and therefore you are all over the place. So again, I said this before, have precise answers, keep it very relevant to the question, and back it with as much as possible as specific data and information, so that you will always have the attention of the interviewer to what you're saying, and it will convey some of those non-verbal elements that you're focused, you know what you're speaking, you are somebody who is thorough, and things like that, which is very important to keep it on track. And if you don't understand the question, or if it is not clear, please be upfront and saying that I'm not able to understand, can you please repeat it? Or something that we also normally do that in our own working when we do a teleconference or a video conference, rephrase the question to be sure that you got it right. And most important, if there are technical difficulties where if you see that there will be a disruption in your telephone line, or there will be disruption in your I'm sorry, somebody saying something? Sorry, I thought somebody was asking something. So
No. Please go ahead, Dr. Dinesh.
yeah, so I was saying it is very important to rephrase that to ensure. And some of those behavioral traits that you will display are, this person is focused, they are staying on track, they know what they talk about and things like that. And if there are any technical difficulties, if you feel that the phone line will just get disrupted, if your internet has a problem and all that, please say that upfront in the beginning of the interview itself, that I have this problem in my area. So if there is a disconnection and all, please don't mind, so that the interviewer is clear. Now, I'm going to say this very honestly. When I ask a very, let's say a very important question or a critical question, and if that point in time, if the person says, oh, my line is disturbed, or they go off connection, it again kind of puts a suspicion in my mind. Is this person go away because they don't have the answer, or is it because they really have a difficulty in the connection? So again, telling this upfront, how does this help in describing that is, okay, here is a person who is upfront. Here is a person who is transparent. Here is a person who is confident to talk about the challenges. These are the non-verbal things that he will convey. All you need to do is before the interview, sit, take some of these notes on what is that you want to say and what is the behavioral trait you want to convey that you are talking to the person. Again, in video conference, it is easy because right now, you can see me doing that. You can show this hand gestures where you say that, okay, this person is kind of open. If it is a telephonic interview, the more focused you stay will help. What is key here is the preparation. Apply some thinking, and for every statement that you make, relate it to the behavioral trait that you have and ask yourself, what is the behavior I want to show in the interview, and structure your lines accordingly. That would be my advice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dinesh. That talks all about setting the expectations right in the start of the conversation itself.
Yep.
Yeah. So we move on to the next question. This is from Mahesh. This for you, and he asks, how do you see IT industry mood or position in hiring project managers right now as a bird's eye viewpoint? Could you please throw some light on the trends? Mahesh, are you online?
Yes, Soma, you read it correct.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to rephrase that question?
Yeah, as long as Mr. Dr. Dinesh understood, I'm okay.
Okay.
Sorry. I think I missed that question. Is it how do I see the IT industry?
Yeah, as of now, how the employers are actually the position right now to take new project managers from outside of the industry. Like, how is the trend right now?
See, probably again, Srikanth is an expert in this field. He might add to this. I'm going to give my view and the way I see it, and also what I hear, from HR leaders in the IT organization in my peer group with whom I constantly speak. If you see, most of our IT projects, even today, are mostly concentrated in the western part of the world, and all of us know that part of the world that is also majorly hit because of the pandemic. And even if before the pandemic there was an indication of recession hitting us, therefore the industry was already proceeding carefully, and the pandemic only has brought in more cautious approach. And therefore, if you look at the ITAS industry, they are taking a cautious approach. Only critical projects are running, and the projects that are not being stopped by the customers are running. And therefore, if you talk about projects that are not running in full flow and projects going on hold, obviously the hiring is also kind of going on hold. But at the same time, there are small niche projects that are also running where the hiring is happening. Is the hiring happening the way it has to be? Or even if you compare the trend with what was happening last year, no, it is definitely much smaller because of the cautious approach. But having said that, if you look at the overall reaction of the globe to the pandemic, everybody is saying, yes, the pandemic brought in a disturbance, but nobody is saying this is the end of the world. And nobody is saying, okay, I don't think things are going to come back. Everybody is talking positively. And everybody is talking about what next. Everybody is talking about future of work, next normal, new normal. So that's the indication. The indications are positive. People are going to move ahead. So right now we see a slump, but definitely it's a matter of time. In a few months' time, I see this going to go a little slowly and pick up a little pace towards the end of the year, and hopefully next year is going to be good. That's the way I envisage this industry.
Yeah, adding few more positive items to what Dr. Dinesh said. In fact, I know for myself there are few organizations, particularly based out of India and so-called offshore centers, are actually using this as an advantage, because this also gave an opportunity for many organizations to showcase that most of the work what used to happen by sending consultants or the team members to customer sites could all be done remote. So in a way, many organizations have started, or at least not started off with this idea, but there are discussions going on to move more work to the so-called offshore centers, which in itself should create more job opportunities for IT market like India. So as again, as Dr. Dinesh has said, maybe for next few months, it might take some normalization time, but eventually once things fall in place, it would be a better market in IT, a better IT job market, at least in India. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Srikantam. One more question for you. This is asked by Chandrasekhar. While talking about transparency, how transparent one has to be? Because there are certain constraints put on project manager from their organization not to tell the customer. Example, we don't have skilled resources with us. In turn, project manager has to face the music from the customer for not delivering in time. So,
Okay.
how does that?
That's a very interesting question. In fact, if the situation is known upfront, so one of the first things that needs to be done, whether we speak to customer, whether we are transparent to customer or not, is the secondary element. First thing what we need to do is that what is our workaround? What is our action on this? Because obviously we should not keep it to ourselves as a project manager. We need to bring it to project sponsor, because if we are not having a solution for this problem, sooner or later the project would fail. And once the project fails, it is not going only to damage the customer's prospect, but also the organization's credibility would also be lost. So first things we need to see is that can we bring in additional skilled resources quickly from the market or from a third party team, or some sort of alternates should be thought about. And of course we need to give some sort of information to customer, because if we are not giving any indication to customer and we are only creating a rosy picture to customer, I'm 100% sure the project without having the solution would have uh, would definitely not go in the right direction. So transparency, yes, we still need to be transparent, but in such situations, it's always better to work with project sponsor, and a combined or a joint solution should be devised, so that some sort of direction is already made on, and we are finally into the right direction. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Mr.
Chandrasekhar?
Srikanth. Srikantham, yes, it does answer. So what I understand is that whatever the things, risk we ensure we encounter, we need to have a proper planning for that in conjunction with our sponsors, so that we have a one single story to be told and we follow it across.
That's very important. You got it absolutely right. So not only to tell the story to customer, but in reality also how we are overcoming this solution, overcoming this situation. Because end of the day, if we continue to be in this scenario, obviously the project would fail.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Srikantam. Dr. Dinesh, over to you. It's a short question, but definitely it is on everyone's minds. In the present situation, due to the pandemic, how does or how will a recruiter view the career gap that people may have?
The overall sentiments of the recruiters are changing. I can say that, but still there is a lot of scope for improvement. In my organization, there is a lot more openness to looking at career gaps. But I do know that in most organizations, they are a little cynical about gaps in career, then they are not picked up. Now, I will first talk about the recruiter's mindset. Whenever we open up any position, then there are number of elements of filtration that the recruiter uses, because there are hundreds of CVs, but there are only one position or only 2 or 3 positions, and especially in a market like India where the market is so big, recruiters are flooded with CVs. Excuse me. Say they look at number of elements to filter the CVs out, and unfortunately, even today, a gap in the career is looked at as an element of filtration. Now, I don't want to get into a debate of is it the right thing or not the right thing, to even get there. But how we can overcome this, and I'm talking about a resume shortlisting phase. Only CVs that scrape through the resume shortlisting phase and then get into an interview where the individual gets an opportunity to explain their gap. Now, how do we overcome this, right? Because on one side, the recruiter's mindset has to change, but it's a long journey. Like I said, recruiters will continue to apply the approach of filtering CVs just because the mere number of CVs that are hitting them. Right? And that is where it is very, very important for you to have an executive summary in your resume. And the executive summary needs to be precise, 3-4 bullet points, very nicely writing about. And I see people writing executive summaries also, which are relating to the efforts that they have put in or their efficiency. Your executive summary should clearly talk about your achievements and accomplishments of how you made the project or the organization successful. If those 3 elements are there, even before flipping through the entire CV where they figure out the gap, the executive summary will catch their attention. Okay, no, I have a project, I have a requirement, and here is somebody who is talking about their achievement. I see a match, the CV goes through. So please concentrate on that part, on how you highlight your story of achievement, and that catches the recruiter's attention. The other element of should gaps considered or not is a much larger topic, and me giving a statement here is not going to it's a problem at large that the HR community should look at addressing. But what I gave you is a small trick on how you overcome that.
Suma, just I have an add-on question to that.
Raven, yes, please go ahead.
Like how even the HR industry is looking at the pay cuts, even like a lot of pay cuts are even happening in the industry. Like while we change the jobs, how is the industry looking at it?
Dr. Dinesh,
Somehow
I guess it's
it
our
looks
pain
like
point everywhere. Yeah.
it looks like he read my mind, and I was actually wondering, I am an HR guy sitting in a call with project management, and not even one question on pay. How can it be? So that gap got filled now. It is all relevant to the business, huh? And I've also applied for job, and always, unfortunately, HR or recruitment are seen as a bad people, because we are the face for candidate before they get into the organization. So whenever there is a negotiation for salary and all that, please, I started my career as a recruiter, and even in my current role, I continue to hire senior leadership positions and therefore involved in salary negotiations and all that. Trust me, it is not easy, and we take no personal fun in paying less to someone. It is always related to the business. That's the first thing that I would say. And right now, all of us know that the industry and the surroundings around us and totally the economy is in not a good shape, right? So if you are looking for a good salary raise, and if that is the reason that you want to look for a job change, I would suggest please hold on for some time, because this pandemic is a global pandemic. It has not affected a particular region. It has not affected a particular industry. It has affected all the industries. It has affected regions across the globe, right? And therefore, if you are running your own business and for the next 1 year at least, things are not certain for you, but you still have to hire people, will you be willing to put more money on the people that you want to hire? Probably not. You will say, yeah, I need this talent, but there is a certain amount of money that I can invest on this person, and therefore this is my budget. Those restrictions will continue, right? And again, it is not the recruiter's mentality. It is the business mindset, because business is putting their money to hire people, and recruiters and HR are mere facilitators of this whole journey. So that's why I would, move little away from the recruiters, because they will negotiate with you. It is not that they are restricting it. It is coming from the business. So salary raise or looking for a job for a big salary raise, this is not the right time. There are, of course, a few companies that are offering you good raise. Yes. On the other hand, are recruiters looking at this opportunity to more people into the organization with less salary raise? No, definitely not. That will never be the mentality. This will be a time to build the pipeline and all that, but there is a restriction, because the recruiters also know, and even the business leaders know, if I get somebody at a lower salary just to take advantage, when things bounce back, this person is going to leave. I would rather bring in somebody with a long-term mindset than a short-term mindset. Right? So that would be, my answer for your question on, how does pay look like at this point in time. It is as uncertain as the business scenario.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh. That was very insightful. I guess we are having a lot more questions, but in the interest of time, I would request if we can wrap up with some closing remarks, and if we can forward those questions to you over email, if you could answer those, that would be really great. Can we, Dr. Dinesh?
Yep. Yep. I will definitely do that. More than willing to do
Yeah.
that.
The questions or the wrap-ups that I would request is like, let's get on to the brass tacks. Let's say I will expect some sample questions from our HR leaders such as you, maybe some common questions or common mistakes that we may make while answering them. What is the best way to answer? Any tips? I'm
Sorry,
asking
sorry.
so gently. Uh,
Can you please repeat it, because you are breaking away? Maybe it's my
oh,
connection.
okay.
Sorry. Can you please repeat the question?
Is my voice better now?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I was asking regarding if we have any sample questions from you when we are talking to you as a project manager and you're interviewing us. Maybe some common questions, some common mistakes that we may make while answering these questions. And what is the best way to answer these questions? I'm asking for a question paper link here.
Uh, if at all a question paper for an interview works, I would have changed my job every year. And so I don't think a question paper for an interview exists. And I'm talking from my role, as the head of a function and as an hiring manager also. But of course, recruiters will have a standard checklist which they follow, because for them it is more of a process, right? And when the recruiter is interviewing, they are recruiting as a recruiter. But when someone like me or the hiring manager is interviewing, we are interviewing as an employer, right? And there is a fundamental difference in these two. For the recruiter, it is filling the number and putting a tick and saying, I hired this person. But for the employer, it is getting the right person into the organization. So this fundamental difference in the mentality drives the whole interview process. Now, a recruiter will always, and as a recruiter, I can give you a list of questions. What is your experience? What do you bring in? What are the critical projects that you have done in? And I don't think you need my help to put that question. You can actually make the question paper yourself. And how? Is the way you write your CV. And again, I will go back to that. The way you write your success story, the way you write your project management journey, or the way you write about your whole career journey. If you put it in such a way that any hiring manager who looks at you will want to ask questions from your CV, and that is more important. And always the answers that you give should be leading the person who is interviewing to ask you another question. And this can happen only by you sitting and spending time on doing a mock interview for yourself. Like, what do I want to tell the interviewer, which leads him to ask the next question based on what I say and not something which is disconnected. The interviewer will always jump between points and ask you different questions if they don't see your answer relevant to what they are asking. So here again, relevance is the point. And form your story in such a way that your answer is always leading to another question. You can make your own question paper. Now, the other reason why I cannot give you a question paper is a question paper can be given for technical skills, but a general interview, a HR interview or a management interview, which is more generic in nature, also depends on the person who is interviewing. So it is not a conceptual interview, it is more of a personal interview. And therefore, if I give you a question paper, I will only be misleading you, but I can again give you a tip on how you can organize it yourself. Yeah? So I'm just turning the table, kind of back to you. I don't know if that helped, but that would be my answer.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Dinesh. Just to add to that, I would, we talked about a recruiter's point of view. Let's talk about the leader who is trying to find the best or the right person for the position. What kind of things that you would be looking at?
Is that to me or Srikant?
I think it's to me.
Okay.
It's to both of you, actually. If you've answered it, I'll pass it on to Srikant.
Okay, maybe I'll allow Srikant to go first because I've been talking for quite some time, and I will definitely answer after him.
Yeah, Srikant, please.
Yeah, of course, one of the first things that when we talk to any person, as Dr. Dinesh already said, we would do the talking with the intention of making sure how we would get this person on board, not with the intention of failing that person in an interview, because the way a person needs a job, every hiring manager would also look for a person getting on board, because only when there is a right match, then things go further. And once you have a right skilled identified person available, then you can start working sooner. So the first objective is to make sure how could you bring this person on board. So in fact, again, that's the reason, even when Saujanya asked me some time back, there are no tailor-made questions like, okay, for any person who walks into the interview, these are my 15 questions or 20 questions that I would ask them and say, oh, this person has given the right answer, yes or no. Based on how the discussion takes a shape, we would fine tune the questions then and there dynamically. So it doesn't really, it's not like, okay, if the question paper was already available, maybe it would already be available on Google, and everybody would find solutions to answers to those 15-20 questions and then come and answer those to me. Then definitely I don't even need to do an interview. So there is nothing like predefined, prefixed set of questions that would be fixed for every person, because every person, the way every project is unique, every person is unique. Based on the person's soft skills, based on the person's experience, we would definitely ask, because it is not like we will ask every person, okay, come and tell me on a scale of 10 on Microsoft project how much you rate yourself. Is it 10 being highest? So those sort of typical stereotype questions would not be existing. First of all, if someone is thinking there are such questions existing, it's a misconception. For every individual, the questions would be tailor-made based on what is there in the resume, based on what is the need of the hour for that moment, and based on how they're answering, the questions would be dynamically created. This is one thing I definitely want to tell, and of course, I would say Dr. Dinesh can also add on top of it.
Very, very well said, Srikant. And just to add to that, perspective of leadership hiring, because I believe Suma, you said if you are hiring for a leadership position, to put it in a single line, it might sound funny. If you are hiring for a leadership position, we will be looking for leadership skills, as simple as that. But not to make it sound generic. Again, this person brings to bring. We will definitely expect the person to be confident. We will expect them to know what they know, and we will also see how this person is able to present things in a nice way that it sounds relevant. And very, very important for leadership is, if someone would have said, hey, I know I came to all this way up in my career without any failures, none of us are going to buy this. And this is only relevant for leadership position. While you have to mention your success stories in your resume, you also should have a couple of failure stories of your sleeve. And it is very important that you also show the vulnerability, and at the appropriate time in the interview, we will see whether this individual is comfortable to share their failure. And at least, in our organization, we do that. Share their failure and also say what they learned from it and how they moved on. Because that is an important trait in leadership, that people do fail, but how people react to those failure and move on is important we will look for. And by doing that, you portray an image that, okay, as an individual, I know what I know, and I also don't know. I also know what I don't know. And that is an important leadership skill. And a couple of examples on how you got work done through your team. That is the other people management element. If you have examples in these lines, I think then you're through.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh and Srikantam. That was very insightful, knowing what we know and knowing what we don't know.
Suma, I have one question. Can I ask?
We are just running short of time, Ramakrishna.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, we will take this after the announcements and other things, if the speaker can stay on for a little while.
No
sorry for that. Saujanya, Srikantam and Dr. Dinesh, please stay on for a few more minutes. We just have a few announcements to make, and then we'll close the session. Saujanya, next slide, please. Saujanya, next slide. Yeah, this comes to the end of every event. And next, please. Okay, our next event, that is 2 weeks from now, it's going to be on the 26th of July, and it's on the best ways to reach the online job postings and hiring consultants. This is the third episode of our Career Enabler series, And the registration link you have already got in the first mail that has been reaching you. But of course, you will be receiving some more mails regarding the registration link soon. So stay tuned for that. Next. Yes, the Women Empowerment Committee has been having quite a few events and have announced a survey as well as a social media icebreaker. You must have received communication on that. Please answer if you have not done so. And next. You must have seen this initiative on the social media handles as well. You are a special one. This is to bring in some small smiles to the faces of everyone around. Please participate in this. The hashtag is given. Hashtag you are a special one. So we'll look forward to people connecting to us on the social media as well as participating in this campaign as well. Next. The call for elections is already out, and most of you would have completed the voting session. But for those whom you have not had a chance to vote, please look out for an email which says your personalized link for the PMI board election. So the new members, please don't worry about it. I think people who have completed at least a year or more within PMI and PMIPCC would have received it. Next. We are going to have the next masterclass session on 18th of July. That is the next Saturday. And we will, the mails and everything have come in. The social media posts are out. Please register for this. It promises to be an awesome session by Spencer Horn. Next. The PMP workshop is starting on 25th of July. The registrations are going on in full swing. And please do take advantage of the promotional offer too. And the contact details are there in the slide itself, as well as you can reach out to us, any one of us for the details. You can reach out to academy@pmi-pcc.org for registering for the workshop. Next. We have the chapter members network meeting 2 weeks from now, that is on 25th of July. And we urge all of you to register for it. That's the place where you get to network. Now, meet people, your colleagues and fellow PMPs. We'll look forward to having you there. We have some important announcements and activities coming up, so stay tuned. Next. We have the knowledge sharing session. It was originally planned for 16th July, but we have just moved it due to some technical things. And it is scheduled on the 30th of July, that is at the end of the month. And it's titled The Road Never Traveled. So the details of this event are going to be in your inbox soon. Look out for the mail for this as well. Next. Yes, we talked about the friends of members last time as well. So if Madhav is on the call, I would request Madhav to come over and talk a few words regarding the friends of members initiative as well. Madhav is there? Okay, Venkat, are you there? Okay, let me see if we'll talk about it right away. This is for the sake of our members. It's known as the Friends of Members. We have two teams. This is to deal with the current COVID situation. At a personal level, if any member has any issue with the COVID situation, any of the immediate members or family has been affected with the COVID, and we as a chapter have planned to help people on a personal level too. This team is headed by B. Madhav Reddy, our president. The contact number as well as the email are right here on your screen. You can please contact him in case of any such eventualities. The next team, this is headed by Sairam Chamarthi, and this is on the professional front. We understand that quite a few of our members are affected by the situation on the professional front, job losses, uncertainties, looking at new jobs which may not suit the profiles as well. In this case, we are asking you to reach out to Sairam for any advice, support, or help. The number and the email ID are displayed on the screen. This is a new initiative that we started a couple of months ago to help our members. Next slide, please. All right, this ends up our announcements as well. We have a lot of events coming up in the following few days. Please stay tuned, and we will look forward for your participation in the coming days as well. So while closing, I would request if any two of the speakers, members, would like to talk about the feedback and how you felt about the session. Anyone volunteering from the participants?
Hello, I'm Chandrasekhar here. So first of all, very thanks to the PCC PMI chapter for organizing such a wonderful session, and very grateful to be honored to be attending this session from both Dr. Dinesh and Mr. Srikantam. It was a very, very nice session where we got to know about a lot of nuances which is going on in the industry, perspective to the recruitment. And also, in a very nicely said, Mr. Srikantam covered the entire aspects of the challenges and other things to be covered in our project as well. So it was very good session, and hopefully we get to hear a lot of things like this, and also get to know the live examples, like as the speaker would have come up to a stage at the current stage, going through the different difficulties, different challenges, what they would have faced in the project. So that will be more helpful and insightful for the project managers as well. So anything of those sessions also will be really helpful, and so looking forward for those. Thank you. Thanks for all.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar. Anyone else would like to share their thoughts? One more person.
Yeah, hi. Narendra here. Actually, I started planning for this PMP exam, and I started on my own. I was not aware much about the PMP chapter of Hyderabad. I thought it's a group, and maybe after PMP attaining certification, then it would be helpful. But then after joining these calls and continuous scheduled meetings and all, so I got confidence that okay, there is a team there to support the people for the PMP aspirants, and so I got quite confidence on this PMP journey. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Narendra. Just to reiterate, after you take up the workshop, you have a complete solution, a one-stop solution by the Academy, which runs right from the workshop till the day you take the examination. The hand-holding is always there for you. So you can always reach out to our Academy, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you, Narendra.
Yeah.
As closing remarks, I would request Srikantam and Dr. Dinesh to talk a few words. And can we share your contact details or email for further communication in the chat box? Srikantam?
Yep. Thanks again, PMIPCC, for wonderful session. It was really nice to speak to 100 plus participants and really beautiful questions. So more than happy to share my contact number, both the email ID and mobile number. So anyone seeking any assistance or help, feel free to reach out to me. Whatever assistance that I could offer, definitely would be happy to do so. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much, Srikantam. Dr. Dinesh?
Well, definitely, yes. way to spend a Sunday. These days we don't have much to go out and do things. So I'm very happy that I spent my first half of Sunday like this. I was equally happy and excited to learn from this interactive sessions, be it from the lecture or through the questions, as much as I liked sharing whatever I knew. Again, thanks for this great opportunity. And I have no issue sharing my contacts. I already see some 25 invitations come on my LinkedIn as the session was going. And I'm a social person, so absolutely open for people to reach me if they think I can be of help to them.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh. I guess you'll receive an email from us also regarding the pending questions. There are numerous, I tell you. I think we would need another couple of hours to answer those questions. We will bundle them up and send it to both of you. Thank you, Srikantam and Dr. Dinesh, for sharing your Sunday morning with us. In fact, we went on the afternoon as well. And it was lovely knowing about your insights, and it's what do you say, immediate face-to-face discussion that we might probably have with our interviewers too. Thank you so much, and you have a great day ahead. Thank you so much, participants. Lovely having you with us, and we look forward to our next event with equal participation too. Thank you.